Welcome everyone today. Looking really forward to the session. I like to be very interactive with participants, so if you've got any questions at any time, please just feel free to interrupt, put your hand up or grab the microphone and ask away, and we'll certainly do our best to answer your questions as we go through. As you can see, today we're going to talk about HR practice and culture and retaining and developing your staff. And one of the critical things in terms of retaining and developing your staff will also really dovetail a lot into recruitment and recruitment strategy and how that's just changed so much in 2022 so far. The first 4 months has seen this year a massive transformation in the way recruitment in the marketplace has occurred, and some businesses have evolved with that and have stayed abreast of that. Others are falling behind and are struggling to keep up with the way that the market is moving. I'm going to preface today's discussion by saying that for some of you in the room today, some of the stuff you're going to hear from us is going to be quite uncomfortable. It's going to be things that you probably don't want to hear about the market, the way it's shifting, the way it's changing. So just be okay with that. Be okay with it being uncomfortable. But what we've tried to do today is make things practical based on real experience and in talking with clients, in seeing what we're getting with candidates in the market. We're trying to keep this really practical and pragmatic. This is not theoretical stuff. This is things that we've seen in the first few months of this year. So let's get to work on this. I'll start with a bit of a summary of what we're going to cover today. So obviously the session's about retention, but everything that we talk about in relation to retention also relates to recruitment. Obviously, the reasons that people want to stay in jobs are the same reasons that people might be attracted to jobs. Very often is the case. So we'll talk a lot about recruitment. We'll provide a market update first of all. We'll then talk about retention strategies around things like hybrid working. That is fundamentally the biggest change in 2022. The last 2 years, it's been very much a band-aid solution to hybrid working. It's been, we're in lockdown, we're out of lockdown, we're in lockdown, we're out of lockdown, and purely been just reactive, dealing with those things as they come up with government regulations and different in every state. Now we're sort of confronted with this situation that is now, what are our permanent solutions for these types of things? And what does the world of work look like from 2022 onwards? So we'll talk about that today in a fair amount of depth. We'll talk about some of the considerations for hybrid working. We'll talk about salary benchmarking and how important that is in the current market and how quickly that is moving as well. We'll also look at some things in relation to training and development, some of the things that you'll need to think about in these years and beyond. Looking at optimizing your recruitment strategy and how so many small things are important in doing that. There's still a number of clients and employers that I know that are still far too complacent when it comes to recruitment. And not only that, they're not adapting and keeping up with what the market is demanding. They're still operating with a mindset that it's an employer's market, and it's not an employer's market at the moment. So changing your mindset in relation to those things, and we'll talk exactly about what that means in terms of step-by-step and your recruitment strategy. And finally, we'll also cover throughout the session the impact of obviously COVID-19 on recruitment and retention. I want to start with just some basic sort of statistics and numbers, which most of you would be familiar with, but sort of sets the scene for what we're going to talk about today. So looking at the employment market, we put this together before yesterday's announcement. So the unemployment rate now has actually fallen to 3.9, the lowest rate, I believe, since 1974. So we're talking almost a 50-year low on unemployment. And some of the challenges that some of you might be finding in the recruitment market are certainly associated with that to some extent. Certainly, government stimulus over that time, and what we saw is a rise in the unemployment rate followed by a very quick fall, as you can see over the last 2 years. Looking at also, though, it's not just the unemployment rate that tells the story of why recruitment and retention is so difficult. We've also got here monthly hours worked in all jobs as adjusted, and as you can see, those monthly hours are at all-time highs. A little bit of a tail off, around when there was, lockdown periods and infection periods. But as soon as that's come out of that, you can see that those numbers hovering up above the 1,800 hours a month, and that indicates a lot of strength in the market. That indicates that as soon as the brakes are released, the market bounces back. And it's another indicator that if people are working a record number of hours in those jobs, the opportunity for them to even pick up additional work is reduced. And that just fuels and adds to the difficulty of recruitment in the market. Finally, looking at employed people, the number of employed people, as you can see, that continues to go up. So that's record number of people employed. It's not a fake unemployment number. Record number of hours and record unemployment rate, as we outlined in the first particular slide. So no real weaknesses we're seeing there. That is also the underemployment rate, showing that the number of people who are underemployed, that is those who are looking for more hours and can't get it, also sits very, very low against traditional models. You can see there that March 22, I think it's certainly on that 10-year graph, it's the lowest it had ever been, slightly up in the lockdown and shutdown periods and straight back down after that. So that's telling the story of all of the factors contributing to where we are today. I found this very, very interesting as well, and what this actually outlines is it outlines the job advert percentage change by industry of February versus January. So people typically get into the new year. January's a bit of a warm-up month. They're not really sure about, they're kind of getting back from holidays. People are on leave. A lot of people say that the year doesn't start until after Australia Day. But have a look at some of these numbers, and in particular, this is the change in the job ad percentage from February to January. And look in particular at hospitality and tourism and retail and consumer products. You've probably been hearing for some time that these are industries that are really struggling with shortages, massive shortages. And these statistics tell the story that the job adverts that are on Seek February v January have gone up 20%. So that's saying there's a hell of a lot of vacant roles. That's saying that there's employers who can't fill those roles. They're still looking for people to fill those roles. And hospitality and tourism, retail and consumer products, sport and recreation in particular, you can see those three numbers very, very high. But that's definitely, those two factors are the biggest factors. People facing roles, or a place you have to go to work, and also combined with the migration element of that, which we'll cover also in today's presentation. So what we are actually seeing in these areas, and we talk about this industry migration, and it's happened throughout the last 2 years. People, as soon as lockdowns were in place, who were the first people that were displaced? Hospitality and tourism, retail workers, people doing sports and activities face to face. So what these people have done is they're not just waiting around for their jobs to come back. They're going, okay, I've got to adapt. I've got to look at other options. I've got to look at other types of industries. And these people have migrated to other industries. So all that is just that, combined with the lack of overseas migration, is just fueling this massive shortage and massive crisis in these particular industries, particularly in hospitality. I mean, some of the things that clients that I have heard that they're doing to retain people in hospitality are absolutely crazy. I mean, we're talking 4-day full-time employment. One of our hospitality members was offering in the marketplace, and that was actually a pretty successful strategy. They were able to win over employees from 5 or 6 day hospitality jobs, which is traditionally what chefs and managers and people like that used to do. 5-6 days, long hours, 60-hour weeks, things like that. Again, this has all turned everything like that on its head. So some employers have adapted, but the ones that are still expecting the 60 hours a week over 6 days, unfortunately left behind. Have a look at that. That's our migration numbers around the total overseas arrivals and departures. And you look at those figures there, and obviously that doesn't necessarily all feed into the employment market, but it somewhat feeds into the employment market. And just look at the drop at March 2020, basically from a bit over 2% to 2 million to zero. So that's, again, a factor, as we've already alluded to in the session. So I think in summation, low unemployment, strong demand, low migration, whether we call it the Great Resignation or something else, it's a candidates market. It is a candidates market. So the one thing that I would just, if you take one thing away from today, do not think that the current market is an employer's market. It is not. It is more now the responsibility or the onus is on the employer to sell the job to the candidate, not the other way around. At 8% unemployment, you can choose whoever you want. The candidate will say, yes sir, 3 bags full to get any kind of opportunity that you might have. But that's where we are right now, and that's where things have certainly changed. Let's keep moving through. So look, I guess in summary and looking at retention, and we'll come back to this a lot today, but I think a few things I would say is that retention, first of all, should not be assumed and it should not be a given. I guess when looking at all employees in your organisation, it is really something now that you just need to be constantly looking at all the time. The days of, clunky annual salary reviews with a CPI increase are over. Those sort of measures just don't keep up with the market. And it's not to say that we just keep increasing money all the time. It's about having clear understanding of, okay, well, what are our people worth? What are we paying them? Do we need to adjust or not? And if we're not adjusting, just setting expectations with people around why or why not. So those are key things and key discussions to be having with your people. Again, what I said earlier in the session, the change in mindset. Businesses required to justify why work should be carried out in the office instead of the other way around. And this is probably one of those uncomfortable topics we're going to talk about today, that a number of people have thought, okay, COVID-19's largely, it's just sort of hovering around now and people have got used to it, and I want all my people back in the office. And this is one of the confronting things, because people have still got their office space. I want to use the office space. I need to see bums on seats in that office to be sure that I'm getting productive work. And that's a hard transition to make for some. Some have done it very, very easily. And I'm not even advocating that necessarily work from home is effective for every single person. Some people are great at it. Some people are not very good at it. Some people without the supervision struggle. But I'm not making that argument. The argument I'm making is that it's a market expectation now. It's become a market expectation. For the last 2 years, because of what's happened and this on-off in the office, out of the office situation, candidates now expect it. And at 3.9 unemployment, if they want it, they can get it. So that's where the employer has to adapt. And as part of that, supervision and methods of supervision have to adapt. We need to get away from thinking supervision as, I have to see someone. I have to see Michelle, 3 meters away, sitting at a desk, to be making sure that she's doing good work. It needs to be a greater emphasis on results and outcomes and deliverables, and less about hours and bums on seats and things like that. So we'll talk about that a lot today, hybrid work, because that's fundamentally the biggest shift, is that if you've embraced that as part of the recruitment and retention strategy, then that's very important. If you haven't, then it might be time to start looking at that, because there's a lot of roles where I've just seen, there's been, come back 5 days a week, everyone, this is what I expect, and then it lasts for a little bit, people put up for a little bit and then realise, I can get something else where I can work 4 out of 5 days at home. So, even if your people put up with it in the short term, and of course there's exceptions to the rule. There's some people that might, live in a tiny little unit close to the city and might like coming out for the, for every day to the city. And that's fine. And that's where we've got to cater for different people. But the overwhelming majority want a level of hybrid work. And we'll get to some of the statistics on that later, and the laws of attraction, as we call them. We spoke about salary reviews, again, based on markets, considerations, and skills improvement. So that's important. We'll talk a little bit about benchmarking and how that feeds into that. I think these days, and when I look at hybrid work, I think office days now need to have a purpose and they need to have a justification. Why are we getting people into our office? Not how many times, why? Why are they coming to the office for that particular day? What is the purpose of that particular day? And one of the best justifications is collaboration, is that if I can give an example of our own business, we have basically just one day in the office. We might have a second one because a couple of us live close for some technical work. But essentially, that one day that we have consists of a fairly lengthy team meeting, a series of individual work in progress meetings and supervision meetings, and that's the day. That's the justification for the day, and that is the day. And that's why we do it. I don't do it so that people can sit down in a spot and I can sit in my office and we only talk to each other when we have a question. There's a clear reason for doing it. And look, what that might mean for every business is slightly different. You may have a collaboration day and then a technical day, but I think that's why a lot of these hybrid situations are going to the 1 to 2 days, is because beyond a collaboration day and beyond maybe a technical, consulting, working together day, what's the justification for the remaining 3 days? To sit down, to make sure that you're comfortable someone's doing the work? I'd suggest if that's the reason, then adapting to different type of supervision is important. And if those employees are not adapting to that different type of supervision, then maybe you don't have the right people. So there's a whole bunch of elements of this. And what I've really seen with COVID in the last 2 years, and what it's really demonstrated to me, is you would think that it's actually people are carrying more people because there's not as much. People are carrying more people because they can't see what they're doing on a daily basis. It's actually been the opposite. I actually find that the poor performers now get found out quite easily because there has been a greater emphasis on results, outcomes. So, and that's very, very clear when you look at that. And I've just seen I've been in this we've been operating now as a consulting for 12 and a half years, but what I've noticed is that there's been a less tolerance for underperformance and poor performance in the last 2, more so than the previous 10, where I think there was a bit more slack. If people see someone in the office and they're there every day, they kind of used to think, okay, well they're doing okay. I'll talk to this slide in particular and then we'll wrap up after this, but here's some ideas around what candidates are looking for right now, just to pick a couple of industries. And in accounting, so Seek now has this new surveying thing that it looks at for people looking for roles in certain industries. And just to look at accounting, for example, questions are asked. There's 4 responses. It's a must-have, delighted if, not bothered, or put off are the 4 responses that they can give. Now, for ability to work from home remotely, 37% of candidates are saying it's a must-have, with another 49% delighted if. So you add that up, what's that? 86% of candidates either think it's delighted if or it's a must-have. So that's, what's that? 6 out of 7 candidates looking for a role in accounting. Flexible working hours, 26% must-have, 62% delighted if. So that's 88% of candidates looking for some. This is on top of the hybrid nature of the work. This is the flexibility of the hours and how the hours can be worked around in relation to those things. So 26 and 62, 88% that's a factor in their decision making around roles. I just thought I'd add in the gender split on accounting. 58% women, 42% men on the sample they had. Don't know how true that is, but that might be accurate. It might not be. Hospitality, just for those who were interested, easy to drive to was one of the questions asked. 35% must have, 48% delighted if. So that might give you an insight into what those types of people are looking at in those roles. On the job, skill development, coaching goes a little bit to the point we spoke about before, albeit a different environment. 49% of must have, 41% delighted if. So 90% of hospitality candidates looking for that training on the job. And I hear from a lot of employers all the time, I don't have time to train them. Unfortunately, that is an area where employers have to adapt and change. And if it's not you that can do it, someone else has to do it in your organisation. One of the other things I would say to you generally as employers is that I think sometimes as well we can tend to overcook certain roles. You might have a role that really, when you look at the duties and responsibilities and break it down, you might actually be looking for a lower level role than you actually think that you need. And we've done this a lot with clients around a lot of admin roles where they say, oh, well, I need a HR person, or I need a marketing grad, or I need someone like this. But really, when you look at it, we can actually get the role down to something, a lower common denominator, which might actually give us a better opportunity or better position to fill in the market depending upon what we're paying or what we're prepared to pay. So very important to also look in detail at the duties and what is it we can do differently to maybe attract someone or maybe lower the expectations coming in and train better as we're talking about. I want to talk to you about these things very quickly because I think this is where, there's some goodness in this and where the small business can really do well in the market if you are committed to your recruitment process. If you think recruitment's going to be something you do on the 11th hour of the day after you've spent 10 hours consulting and speaking with your clients, and it's just the kind of something you do in your spare time, I'm here to tell you that that's just not going to work anymore. So I want to tell you about all the things that you have to do right. All of these things have to be done right for you to be successful, okay? We'll go through each of them quickly. Effective job advertisements. Don't write a job ad like a job description, okay? You need to sell the benefits of your organization in a short and succinct advertisement. Keep out the useless criteria. When I say useless criteria, can-do attitude, ability to work independent, those sort of terms are useless. No candidate ever says, I don't have a can-do attitude, so I'm not going to apply for that job. Those sort of things are things that you don't need in your ads. You want them quick. People's attention span, again, candidates' attention span for ads is very, very low. It's clickbait. Just like when you're on social media, flick through. You're not going to read everything that's on your feed. So first thing is to get that right. Multiple job boards. Stop thinking that my whole strategy is just putting an ad on Seek and then waiting. That's not enough. Not enough in the current market. Okay? Look at multiple boards. Some boards are really good at delivering results, particularly in certain industries. And there's also sometimes some industry-related boards and other strategies like university job boards that can be very, very good also. Social media strategy. You need to try and find a way to get to passive candidates as well as active. Remember, job boards are active people looking for roles. Passives are people who might be looking on social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, those sort of things. So look at part of it being that. The next part is critical. Speed is absolutely critical to make quick decisions and avoid drawn out interview processes wherever possible. I know some of you in this room would love to have 2 interviews, 3 interviews. The candidate does not care for your slow interview process. Make decisions quickly. Get the decision makers to the key meetings. Reference check and pre-employment checks need to happen quickly. But that 4th point in particular, speed is critical. Candidates are coming in. You should be making contact within the first 24 hours. If you are looking at resumes on a hammock on Sunday, that's not good enough. It's not keeping up with the market. It's not keeping up with expectations. Offer negotiation, employment contract, and onboarding, do it quickly. So speed from process, from start to finish, is one way in particular where you can do better than your competitors. If you are a reluctant decision maker, if you want to take your time, unfortunately, that's where dithering at the moment is bad in the current market.
Does your business currently have a HR or workplace relations issue?
Are you unsure how to work through compliance issues but still achieve a good business outcome?
Why not take advantage of On Demand HR's free 30-minute online consultation with an experienced HR consultant?
At the end of the consultation, we also provide you with a strategic action plan to resolve your current issues.
To see the types of matters we can help with and to schedule your consultation, please visit ondemandhr.com.au/advice.
We look forward to delivering certainty, confidence, and clarity for your business in your HR and workplace relations affairs.